everybody. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how you can create a Pong game inside of Unity. So, before we start developing our actual game, I just want to show you a quick preview of how our game will look after we develop it. So, I'm just going to show my screen, and basically, this is Unity. So, I'm just going to play or run our game, and basically, we have two paddles on both sides, and we just have to, just bounce this ball around here. So it's kind of a really simple game, and it has really simple assets like just a rectangle which just moves around and just a ball that bounces around. That's what we'll be creating in today's video, and let's get started. So here I've just created a new Unity project, and for those of you who don't know how to do it, just open up your Unity hub and then just hit new. Wait and select 2D because this is going to be a 2D project. Name it whatever you want, store it wherever you want. I'm going to close that, close even that. So now the next thing that we need is actually the assets for our game. So I'm going to use Photoshop to create these. So basically you can use any other software like a GIMP or essentially whatever you want. So it doesn't matter what you use, but just some simple assets like just a ball and a rectangle, a rectangle. So let's just wait for this to open up. And it just opened up. Now we're going to create a new project. Now we're just going to select custom and let's make it 64 by 64. I'm just going to name it rectangle, rectangle, rectangle like so. And then we can make the background white. Okay, all of that's good. And then hit create. So this is all that we want, okay? Just a simple square. So now I'm going to save it as and save it to my computer. And then I can go over to wherever my project is stored. So here, assets, or sorry, not that one. Here, coding projects. And then we can go over to Unity, and then the Pong game demo. And then under assets, I'm just going to save this as a Photoshop document. So .psd, you can save it as a PNG if you want to do that. I'm just going to save that as a Photoshop document. Now we have created our first asset. The next asset that we want is actually just a circle for our ball. So I'm just going to create a new project and just set it to circle as the name. And then for this one, I'm just going to make the background as transparent because we don't want to see any background there. And then just create it and we've got it there. Now let's just go ahead and select the circle tool. Or actually first let's just zoom in so that you guys can see it. Now we're just going to select the circle tool, so just keep clicking unless all of these options come up. Select ellipse tool and then just start drawing a circle. And also I'm just going to set the fill to be totally white. So totally white. Hit OK and OK. Now let's just draw out a simple circle. So I'm just going to hold down shift and just drag it there. Okay. Nice. Now we'll just move around to where we want it. I think that looks good. So right in the center. And now we will even export this. So file, save as, and of course even this is a PNG. So I'm going to do circle.psd. Actually, it's rectangle is spelled wrong. Rectangle here, and then here we'll just do circle. Save it and hit OK. And that's all good. Now, if we open up Unity, it should be imported. Now let's actually get into the level design of our game. So for that, the first thing that we will do is just put in the walls. You can call it whatever you want. So the things on the top, just resize it to match my needs. And then this box is just whatever the camera actually sees. So the view that there'll be in the game view. Okay, a little bit more on both sides, and that's looking good enough. Now the next thing that we want is actually the bottom wall. So I'm just going to name this to be top wall, and then this one to be bottom wall, like so. That's looking good to me. Now, of course, just push it down. So, let's see what the top wall has is the y pause. That's 5, and the bottom wall will just do -5, so it'll go down there. Okay, now we actually want the two players. So again, rectangle, expand. And if you're wondering how I'm getting, these tools, it's just this tool, which is called the rect tool. Now let's just put it there. I think that looks good. And we're gonna call this player 1. Okay, then duplicate that, and then see the X position this time. So I'm just gonna copy that, go here, paste that, or actually they both anyway have the same thing. Now just get rid of the minus so that'll go over there to the other side. Looking good. Here, let's just call this player 2. And now we just need our ball. So I'm just going to drag in our circle. Just call this ball. Reset the transform on this. And that's looking pretty good. Okay. So now the next thing we need is actually right now you can see the background is that little blue color, which I don't really like. So I'm just gonna make it totally black, and yeah, that just looks better for me. Now what we're after that going to do is just select everything except for camera and actually just add a box collider 2D. And it's important that you add box collider 2D because this is a 2D project. Just do that and basically just adds colliders to all of this stuff. So if I just go ahead and disable the sprite render, which is responsible for rendering it out, then you can see the green line. So that's just the collider. Okay, all of that's looking nice. So now we want some physics added. So we're going to add that to our players, so the player 1 and 2, and also the ball. So I'm just going to add a rigid body 2D to this, and we can leave all of this stuff, but we will change the gravity scale to be 0. Now the next thing that we're going to be implementing is actually player movement. So we actually need to set that up for the player 2. For the player 1, it's actually already set up as, or sorry, we need to set it up as the S and W keys. And for the player 2, we need to set it up as the up and down keys. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to go over to edit project settings, select the input manager, expand this axis tab, I'll say. And then here we've got two verticals. So basically this one is for the joystick. So we can actually delete this, but if you ever want to expand it so that you can play it with the joystick, then you can do that. Now for the vertical, what we're going to do here is just duplicate the array element, and we will call this vertical 2. Now for the first vertical here, we will just set the negative buttons and the positive buttons. So here, for the negative button, we'll just do S, and for the positive button, we'll just do W. And we don't want any alt, negative, and positive buttons. So they're like the secondary ones, I'll say. For the vertical 2, we'll just use up and down, that's okay, and remove S and W. Now what I'm going to do is just close it up. And now we're just going to do some coding. So I'm just going to select player 1 and 2 and just add a component to both of these called the player. So it's just a script basically. So we're just going to add that script right over here and let this reload and do its magic of just creating the scripts. And then we're just going to create a folder for our scripts because yeah, I just like to stay organized. And then I'm just going to drag in our player script into that scripts folder because of course that's a script. Now we will actually double click it so that it'll actually open it up. Now the first thing that we will have are just some variables. So it just actually opened up. So first we will have like a public boolean, which will just say us if the player the or if the object that the script is attached to is the player 1. So the script is only going to be attached to the player. So yeah, we can just do player one, and then the second variable public, there's going to be a float, and this is going to be controlling the speed. The next thing that we need is a reference to a rigid body component so that we can actually move our players around. So I spelled that wrong. Rigid body 2D, then I will call this like RB. Okay, now we'll also create a float for movement. So float movement, and I spelled that wrong. Movement. Put in a semicolon, and writer automatically marks that as private. If you want, you can put that in. Now here we can actually go ahead and remove our start method. So I was just using control X. And here inside of our update, we can actually check if the player that we're on is player 1. And if that's the case, we will go ahead and do movement. So we will set our movement variable to be input dot get axis raw, and then we will use our horizontal axis. I'm sorry, our vertical axis. So just imagine that we're just using that axis that we have defined. So we had vertical 2 and vertical. Now if that's not the case, then we will set movement to be input dot get axis raw, and then we will basically get the vertical 2 axis. Okay, now we will set the velocity of our rigid body. So we will do rb dot velocity is equal to new vector 2. So this is basically a vector 2. And here we can actually leave the x as is. So as it is. So we'll do rb dot velocity dot x, which will contain the actual x value. Next, I'm going to do movement movement multiplied by speed as the y value. Now I'm just going to save the scripts, and let's head back into Unity. Let's actually load up. So it's just refreshing it. Now we'll select our player 1, and then, for the script, we will mark it as player 1 because it's our player 1. The speed, you can set it whatever you want, so I'm just going to do 5, which is like the perfect speed that I found, and then we're just going to link up our rigid body by just dragging it in there because right now it doesn't know what our rigid body is. Now for a player 2, this is not player 1, of course, so that's just going to be false, and then let's set the speed to 5 and just drag in the rigid body. Now if I hit play, so I'm just going to click that button. You can also do Control P for play. Let this load, and we can actually move our players. So I'm using the S and W keys for moving them around. Let me actually make them kind of thin. So just do that. I think 0.2, oops, sorry there. Here, point 0, point, like, let's say 2. That's looking too thin. Let's say 0.4. Okay, that's looking good. You can put it again, whatever you want. So 0.4, and now they should be looking better. You can do whatever you want. Just make it look better. Just spend more time on it. Okay, nice. Now let's actually create the script for our ball. So I'm going to add a ball script like so. Create an ad and let it just refresh. So okay, it's just refreshing. Nice. Now we're of course going to drag it in to our scripts folder because even that is a script just like our player scripts. Now we'll reload, and then we're going to double click it to open it up. Okay, let me zoom in a little because that can be hard to see. Okay, nice. Now what we're going to do is just create our variables again. So here we will have a public float for our speed, speed, and then after that we will have a reference to our rigid body. So here we will do public rigid body 2D, and then again or B. Now instead of the start method, or actually first let's get rid of our update method. Here we will just call a method that's called launch, and it's going to be a custom method, and I know we have not created it, but here I'm just going to call it. Then after that, down over here, I'm going to create a void launch. If I can spell that right, launch, no parameters, and inside of here, we will just create a float x and then a float y. So float x and float y. And here we will basically get a random number, which is going to be 0 or 1. So we will do random dot range, and we will do 0 and 2, and 2 won't be counted here. And then if this is equal to 0, so here we're using a ternary operator. This question mark is basically, it's like an if statement. So if this random number that we get is equal to 0, then we will set it to -1. And then this colon is like else, and we will just set it to 1. So we're setting the x there, and here we will set the y. Then of course we will set the velocity. So rb dot velocity is equal to new vector 2. Again, that's a vector 2 there. And then for the x, we will just say speed multiplied by x. And then for the y, we'll do speed multiplied by y. Okay, now I've actually saved this script and basically just head back into Unity. We have to of course link them up, so I'll just do 5 and then link in the rigid body. So just drag it in, just hit play, and we should be seeing that our ball goes into its own random direction when our actual game starts. Now what we want is a little bounciness, right? So when we're right now, let's wait, when we're right now colliding like with the top, then it's not actually bouncing it down. So this is what we'll be controlling right now. So here I'm just going to create a folder for all of our materials. And inside of that, we will create a new physics material 2D. And we're doing this, of course, for the bounciness. So I'm just going to call this like ball. Did I spell that wrong? No, I didn't. So the friction, I'm going to set it to 0 and the bounciness to be 1. But right now, it's not linked up to anything, so that's not going to do anything. Now for the bounciness effect, we actually need to take this ball and we need to drag it over here where it says material. Okay, and then if I expand this info, or actually constraints, sorry, not info, we will freeze the rotation on the z-axis because we're just, implementing the bounciness. And then for our player 1 and our 2, we will freeze the position, sorry, on the x, and then we will freeze the rotation on the z. So we only want the players to be moving on the actual y-axis, not on the x-axis. Okay, now if I hit play and if I test this out, so let's just wait for that to enter play mode, and boom, it's bouncing, right? So really nice. You can play around with the speed and you can do whatever you want with it. Okay, but right now, if yeah, so it's gone out of the screen, it won't come back, right? So for that, it's just a simple fix. So we'll just basically add a wall over here, expand that like so. We're going to bring it, okay, let's just be there, and then just duplicate it. Actually, let's just make it a little bit bigger. Duplicate, get it there on the other side, and then somewhat there will look fine. Then let's actually see our top and our bottom wall. So we just need a collider for these. So I'm just going to select both of them, add a box collider 2D, and just give them like a proper name. I'll just call this wall here, and this one will be like wall 1. Okay, hit play, and then let's wait until that starts. Now if I miss the ball, or if I leave the ball, okay, somehow. Okay, there we go. Now it bounces back in, and yeah, we can just keep playing like that. So really nice. And actually, with that being said, we have completed this little Pong game in inside of Unity. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.